Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Judas Priest rocks MGM National Harbor with heavy metal on Thursday night. I spoke to founding bass player Ian Hill about the band's rise to success on songs like Breaking the Law, Living After Midnight, and You've Got Another Thing Coming. Ian Hill, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP.
Oh, thanks, Jason. It's a pleasure.
So you're calling it the 50 Heavy Metal Years Tour. Was the actual anniversary, was it delayed by the pandemic, but now we're actually able to celebrate 50? Is that what it is?
That's right. Yeah, it was. It was delayed for 2 years. It's now 52, coming on to 53 years. So. But yeah, we're determined to get through it, pandemic or not, you know. So, yeah, we're back to do it now. I know we're a couple of years late, but better late than never.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because the band was formed in 69. So yeah, 2019 would have been 50 years. But you know what? The whole world went down the tubes, and we're finally coming back. So you can still celebrate the 50 years. It's fine. What all can we? Is it going to be? I assume all the hits, all the big, almost like a greatest hits kind of a show, or is there anything new or a little both?
A bit of both. We like to put a cross section in when we can. Obviously, there's fans' favourites there that you can't drop, really, that we all love. Love to play and love to listen to. But we like to throw a curveball in here and there, you know. So there's something off the first album, Rock and Roller, and One Shot of Glory we're opening with from Painkiller, and that's something we've never played before. So yeah, and a mixture of other stuff, old and new, you know. The trouble is with 50 years of music, you've only got a certain amount of time to try and cram as much in as you can. So there'll probably be some fans' favourites missing there, but I'm sure they'll enjoy what's been put in their place.
Right, exactly. Well, we're talking about, the band's 50 years, but I want to hear of all about your, what do we call it? 70 plus years. Take me back to the beginning. I knew you were born in England. And how did you get into music to begin with? Was there, were your parents playing it around the house, or, I want to hear those early days.
Yeah, I was born in 52, actually. My dad played double bass in dance bands and jazz combos and things like that. And I got the gene from him, although I wasn't particularly interested in playing, really. I was too busy being a kid. And my dad, unfortunately, died. He was only 46, and I was 15. And he just started to teach me the rudiments of the double bass. And, of course, after that, sort of knocked the wind out of my sails for a while. And then I started to listen to the contemporary music of the time, Cream, John Mayall, Hendrix, and all these people. None of which featured a double bass. So I got myself a bass guitar, which I found was ultimately easy to play and ultimately more portable, and went on with that and taught myself from then. I just listened to my favourite players and picked out the bass lines of the songs and learned that way. There's a certain section of notes here, that must be a key, and it just went like that. We all pretty much did it the same way. I had no formal training apart from that, just a few months really with my dad.
Well, sorry to hear you lost him at such a young age, 15. I can't imagine. That make you grow up quick. So you said he started teaching you just the basic fundamentals of that on the double bass. So once you honed the craft and decided to take it seriously, were you always thinking of him every time do you still every time you pick up that instrument?
Yeah, he'd love what became of Judas Priest. He would absolutely love it. I don't think he'd like it, but he'd love the success. I come from a pretty musical family. My dad's sister, her lad, she had 4 boys, all of which are musicians, guitarists, drummers, clarinetists. One guy played the clarinet, and unfortunately for them, fortunate for me, I'm the only person that ever made a go of it, and I think I was probably the only one that took it more seriously, and looked upon it as a career.
So you said he would be thrilled and proud of your success as a musician, but even maybe not a fan of the heavy metal. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely right. Yeah, he was a jazz. He'd rather listen to T-Bone Walker, and Joe Pass and people like that, and of course the big bands, the Nelson Riddles and things like that. I think he'd handle the blues, because there's a lot of jazz in blues as well. You know, he'd handle that part of it. But the heavy metal sort, no, I think he'd have drew the line somewhere.
Well, there's plenty of us out there in the world that love that you went in the heavy metal direction. So remind us the forming of the band itself. Was it true that was your classmate, KK Downing?
That's right. Yeah, we were only 16, 17. There's Ken and myself and another friend from the housing estate where we lived, John Ellis, who was a drummer. And we were just learning our trade, as I said, you know, just picking notes out and keeping the beat together and what have you. And there's a place in the local area, a rehearsal facility. And Al Atkins, who was the vocalist with the original Judas Priest, there was one before us. They only lasted a few months. But he'd already got a bit of a name in the area, you know. He'd been at it a bit longer than the rest of us. He walked past our rehearsal room and liked what he heard, and you know, sort of came in and asked if we needed a vocalist, which we did. Because you know, we were all getting on musically, but from a vocal point of view, none of us could really carry a tune. And that must have been in probably the fall of 1970, something like that. And then we were ready to go in early 71. I mean, when he joined, obviously we did change the set list. Not that we had one, got a set list together, I should say, and we were ready to go by 71.
Gotcha. So you're saying that the band was semi-existed before you joined, like, because I've always loved the name Judas Priest. It's such a great, you know, biblical irony. But you're saying, I was going to ask how you came up with the name, but you're saying it already existed.
Yeah, the original bass player with the original Judas, but we were all friends, you know, all these people. Brian Stapenhill, who was the bass player with the first Judas Priest, he thought of it, and I think he got it off Bob Dylan. There's a Bob Dylan song, Judas Priest, and somebody else.
Okay.
I'm not a Dylan fan, so I don't really know. But that's where the name came from. And when Al joined the band, he said, well, you know, shall we call it Judas Priest? And, you know, already a bit of a name in the area, and we agreed on it, you know. So that's where the name came from Bruno Stapenhill.
Gotcha. Cool. Thanks for shedding a little light on that. I didn't even know that. All right, cool. Well, then, so when does Rob Halford join as he's been the longtime lead singer. When does he actually take charge of the band?
Yeah, we were doing all right, you know. We sort of left our jobs and we were doing it sort of, well, to say professionally, he's putting a bit of a grand title to it, but at least we were earning a very, very modest living, you know, playing at just gigging here and there. And Al's wife got pregnant, and obviously on what we were earning from the band at that time, it wouldn't cover, you know, keeping a family, because she had a job. And she in those days, there was no sort of maternity leave or any of that stuff. So he had to leave and go and get a job, you know. And at the time, I was dating Rob's sister Sue, who I subsequently married, and had our first son Alex. And Sue said, "Why don't you try my brother?" You know. And I wasn't at that point aware that the brother was a musician at all. It's funny because we'd heard of the band Hiroshima, you know, they were on posters, you know, in the same way we were. And we went to his mom's, Sue's mom's house, and he was still living with his mom and dad, and had a meeting with him. And as soon as we heard him open his pipes, you know, we thought, you know, we've got our man. And we obviously changed the set a little bit, and not a great deal. And because our drummer, Chris Campbell, he left at the same time as Alan. There was some time there, you know, and he wandered off and did other things. And Rob brought along his drummer that was drumming with him in Hiroshima, John Hinch. He was the drummer on our first album. And went from there, you know. Carried on. The manager started working for a record company called Gold Records in London. And got us a deal through that, you know. And then, as I said, the rest is history.
The rest is history. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You meant well, and you mentioned Rock and Rolla because you said you're going to play a song off of that at National Harbor on the 31st. But take me into those early albums. I know. Let's see. So after Rock and Roll, you did Sad Wings of Destiny, Sin After Sin, Stained Glass, Killing Machine. They were all pretty successful on the British charts. Before it was your sixth one, British Steel, in 1980, that went massive, around the world, including here in the States. But before we get to British Steel, tell me about those early first five albums. Like, how do you guys think your sound evolved from Rock and Roll all the way through Killing Machine there?
Well, yeah, I mean, in the early days, I mean, heavy metal didn't exist. We were what they say is heavy rock. That was the first two albums. And Gold Records, bless them. I mean, I think they were expecting us to make the record company rather than the other way around. It became apparent that they hadn't got the financial clout really to put any sort of any sort of promotion into the band at all. They certainly couldn't afford to send us to America, for instance, and things like that. And we signed with a new management company, and they had a contact at CBS as it was then. Robin Blanchflower, the guy's name, came to see us and liked what he saw, and persuaded Maurice Oberstein, who was boss of CBS in London at the time, to take us on. And suddenly, we got a bit of, we've got a decent advance to make a decent album. I mean, the first two albums, the first one was done at night because the studio time was cheaper.
Right.
We slept in the van outside during the day, and cleaned ourselves up in the bathrooms in the studios, and then recorded throughout the night. We had to be out. I think it was 8 o'clock in the morning, back to the van. And that's how the first one. The second one wasn't much different. We did it. It was in Morgan Studios and at Rockfield in Wales, which is a constituent part of the UK. But when, of course, CBS signed us, there was a bit more cash there. They gave us a better advance, so we could record during the day and afford to stay in a modest hotel. And of course, they could afford to send us to America as well. And there was a sort of an apprenticeship you went through back in those days. The first time you went to America, you were sort of first on the bill. Doesn't matter how many bands were on the bill, you were number one. The second time, you might have moved up a notch to special guest. And the third time, you were playing your own smaller gigs, and a special guest to large ones, which incidentally was Kiss in '79. And then, this is assuming that you're talented and people like what you do, and then you're on your own after that. We were doing headline tours with, it would have been maybe Killing Machine, part of Killing Machine anyway, the tour. And then the next one was British Steel, and that's when we were on our way then. Everything gelled with British Steel. It was called heavy metal then. That's when it sort of, everything, not just the music, but the image as well, and the attitude and all the rest of it that went with it. It all sort of came together with British Steel, and it was a very, it was the basis from what came afterwards, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's the British Steel was in 80. It's like you're saying, it's sort of like all the stars aligning then of not only the heavy metal sound coming into popularity, the image, the music itself, everything was coming into alignment on that one. And tell me about the big lead off single on that one, Breaking the Law. Tell me any cool stories from the writing or the recording of that.
Not really. It was written as usual by Ken and Glenn. The music and the lyrics are written by Rob, and it's just about the sign of the times. Basically, guy couldn't get a job, down and out, got no money, and his only way out was to go and go rob banks. Those are the lyrics, and people picked up on that. And of course, it was the single. It was a comparatively commercial song, radio friendly they call it these days, and it was picked up on, in Britain anyway. And we did a video with it as well with Julian Temple at the helm, which is a classic in itself. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but He was going with a good storyline to Julian, and yeah, like I say, it was it was picked up on by, and he did a lot to further the cause of the band, if you know what I mean. He got us on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And of course the same album, British Steel, also had "Living After Midnight." Man, we all know these. We love these songs. "Rockin' to the Dawn." Why do you think that one works so well? I mean, you mentioned you used to tour with Kiss, and it's sort of that same idea of rock and roll all night, party every day. It's just it's living after midnight, rocking to the dawn. I mean, why do you think that message? I mean, it's pretty obvious. I guess it just speaks to rock and roll fans. They want to party.
It does. Well, it speaks to everybody. You know, you get out of work on a Friday night. You know, you're not going to go home and put your slippers on and watch TV, are you? You know, you're going to be down the bar having fun. And that's basically what the song's about. It came about, actually. Ken and Glenn we were doing this at Ringo Starr's old house in Ascot. He got a studio there, and we were recording it there. And it's a big Georgian mansion. We were sort of staying there as well. You know, we were sleeping there in the rooms upstairs. And Ken and Glenn, they were going on till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And Rob went down and complained. He said, "What is this living after midnight?" And then he must have twigged. Whoa, wait a minute, that's pretty good. And went upstairs and started writing the lyrics to it. Next thing you know, you've got a hit song.
Wait, you said you were at Ringo Starr's mansion?
Yeah.
That's where you recorded Living After Midnight?
Tittenhurst Park, yeah. It was called Startling Studios at the time. It used to belong to John Lennon. And he flogged it to Ringo for some reason. And Ringo, he went off to live in Switzerland, I think, and he just wasn't using the house. And somebody suggested, well, why don't you rent it out as a studio? And you've got a state-of-the-art studio there. At least it was when it was put in there. Things go obsolete pretty quickly in the recording world. But at the time, it was a damn good studio, you know. And of course, the house, it was a Georgian mansion. It got something like 12 bedrooms, something like that. So you arrive and go pick your bedroom. And and there was a housekeeper there that would cook your meals for you. You know, so we were well looked after.
Wow.
It's a great atmosphere as well. You know, I mean, recording in, you know, where Lennon and Ringo used to live. I think somebody went into a cupboard under the stairs by mistake one day, opened this door, and there's a pile of gold albums in there. I mean, dozens of them.
Oh my God!
You know, from all over the place, and of course you haven't got a wall big enough to put them on. You know, they were under the stairs.
Yeah, seriously. Well, you know, maybe a little of that Beatles magic just oozed off of the walls onto your.
Yeah.
I love that story. I never knew that. That's great. Well,
in fact, when John Lennon was killed.
Yeah, he was killed that year, right? In 1980. Yeah, same year.
But can you remember the song "Imagine" and the video they did?
Of course.
The video was John sitting at a grand piano in a house, and Yoko was walking around opening these curtains.
That's the house?
We were sitting in that room when the news came through.
Oh my God! Seriously, you were in the room of the Imagine video, you know, with all the fog and all that. That you were in that room.
That's it. And they played the video, and we thought, shit, this is the room. And there wasn't one of us that didn't look around, you know, expecting to see Yoko opening the curtains. You know, it was a spooky time.
Oh,
but like you say, maybe some of the aura rubbed off on us.
Absolutely. Well, rest in peace to the genius John Lennon. And you know, it's one of those. It's one of those where everyone remembers where they were when they found out he was assassinated, and you literally have the best where you were story of that. You were in the room of Imagine. That is incredible. That's a gold story. Thanks so much. That's amazing. On tragic circumstances, of course. Well, maybe time for one more. Tell me about You Got Another Thing Coming in '82. I guess it was a couple albums later, but I always love that song. That one, another one you just want to turn on and blare out the window. But take me into the writing or the recording of that one real quick before we run.
Well, it's funny. We were actually in Florida at the time, finishing off an album, and we'd finished the album, and we were just a few minutes short. And that was thrown together. It was thrown together in a few hours, and it was down in a day. And it was just one of those songs that it was just magical, really, the way it just all went together. And this is the one that really broke us in the States. because AM radio, it was called AM radio in those days. These days you call it, I don't know, mainstream radio, so probably these days. And they played the hell out of it, and people were going to work and they were listening to it on the radio, you know. And I just remember the tour that we had planned was slowly, one by one, the gigs were being sort of cancelled. Those gigs that were moving us to larger places, and it made all that difference. Just one song, you know, that the radio picked up on. And like I say, we went from playing to 3,000-4,000 people to playing to, you know, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, you know, just from that one song.
Wow, that's incredible.
And to this day, it's a fixture in the stage set, you know, in the set list.
Oh, you'll hear that everywhere. You'll hear it in movies. You'll hear it in video games. You hear it in commercials. It's everywhere. Well, wow, yeah, and it always fascinates me that, you know, you'd had all the early 70s stuff we talked about, you know, famous in you know, the British stuff, and then the 80s stuff was, you had all the mainstream global, even in America, all those hits. But it always fascinates me that you didn't even get Grammy nods until the 90s. Like, you had to wait past into a third decade for Painkiller and Bullet Train, and then I guess you got nominated for Visions and Nostradamus, and you finally won for Dissident Aggressor in 2010. But was it bizarre to you that it took so long, or do you not really even care about the awards kind of stuff?
I don't know. I mean, I think very few metal bands were getting Grammys anyway, you know.
Oh, true.
But we go more to the mainstream artists, you know. Of course, when these things come along, it's very flattering, you know, to think that you've been recognised by your peers. But it never registered until we were actually nominated. Oh, Grammy! Oh, that would be nice, you know. And just to be nominated is a great honour. But to actually win one, I mean, that came out of the blue. But we were hoping to get one for is it Painkiller?
Was the first one? Yeah.
Yeah. We were hoping to win it with Angel of Retribution, and that wasn't even mentioned. But we won one from a song we'd recorded all those years ago on Sin After Sin, you know, as a live performance, for which we are eternally grateful. You know, it's on my windowsill in a little case.
Right. Well, I actually, now that I've looked into it a little more, I think I answered my own question, because I don't think they even started giving out the category for hard rock or metal performance until like '89. So that would explain it. You guys were ahead of the time.
Do you know who won the first one?
I could act like I know the trivia, but it's so why don't you tell me?
Jethro Tull.
Jethro Tull. Wow.
I mean, that's how much knowledge they got about heavy metal. I mean, I love Jethro Tull. I think they're a brilliant band, but heavy metal they ain't, you know.
Quite a different genre.
Yeah.
It's very different, very different. All right. Well, very, very cool. Well, you've been generous with your time. I know you got to run, but before we go, speaking of accolades and stuff, I know Judas Priest is nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year. You're on that short list of bands. We find out in May, I think, if you're actually in the class. But do you think this is the year?
It could be, yeah. I don't know. It's just another one of those things. You know, something that we haven't really thought. It'd be nice, like I say. When you're recognised by your peers, it's always an honour. But it's not something that you lose sleep over necessarily if it doesn't happen. It'd be great if it happened. But the people you really need to keep happy are your fans, without whom, you know, none of us would be here anyway. But it's always nice when you're recognised, you know, by media, like music people.
Absolutely. Well, those music people are the audience that are going to be at the MGM National Harbor here in the DC area. Judas Priest is coming out on March 31st. So get your tickets now. Anything, Ian Hill, anything you want to just speak directly to the listeners and tell them, you know, hey guys, come on out. It's going to be a rocking show, that kind of thing. Speak directly to them and tell them why they should come on out. Yeah, coming out. The show's bigger and better than it's always been. We love playing in DC. We always have done. So coming out, you won't be disappointed. It's a great show. All right. Ian Hill, founding bass player of Judas Priest. Thanks so much for joining us. And on a personal note, thanks for all those bass lines over the years. You know, your music has rocked so many of us. And so thank you for the music. I just got to say that. Thanks so much.
Oh, well, that has been a pleasure.
All right. And to bring it full circle to the front, to the beginning, I'm sure like we were saying, I'm sure your dad would be very proud of how you've made it. So congrats.
Sure. He's looking down on us with a big smile on his face.
Absolutely. Well, congrats. All right. Well, we really appreciate you joining us.
Okay. Thanks, Jason. It's been a pleasure.
All right. We'll see you at the MGM. Talk to you soon.
Still will. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the D.C. area is great, and Podcast D.C. gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast D.C. is the new local app with hundreds of D.C. area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast D.C.